Hey guys, Steve Camerata here. I'm back with some reading of my book, Please Don't Die, future New York Times best-selling book, Please Don't Die, written by Stephen Camerata. There she is right there. So I read so far the introduction, the prologue, chapter 1, 2, and 3. This is chapter 4. And this is titled The Introduction. Much to the delusion of Mom and Dad, growing up on Outwater Park had unwittingly introduced me to the wonderful world of sex, drugs, and rock and roll at a rather early age, although not particularly in that exact order. When it came to these three specifics, I was easily seduced. I was like the proverbial moth drawn to the flame, and I didn't know it at the time, but it was this introduction and lure that would inescapably shape my future path, for better or for worse, and make me into the man that I am today. My mother had a love for music, and when she was pregnant with me, I was told that she would often listen to soothing classical music. I think it is because of this fact that I was born with a similar love and passion for music. Growing up as a kid, the only music I ever really knew existed was Bach, Beethoven, Chopin, and other classical greats. Much to the chagrin of my parents, these masterpieces were soon to be replaced with the likes of Kiss, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, and whatever else I could get my greedy ears in close proximity to. But my newfound love for rock and roll was also coupled with intrigue for the drugs and sex that appeared to be part of the package. This was a package deal that I accepted with open arms. If I could trace things back to where it all started, I would honestly say that cigarettes were to blame. I would write a note and forge my dad's signature and take it to Strange's Market in Lockport, where I would purchase my very first pack of Winston cigarettes for only 75 cents a pack. I was about 10 years old. At first, I really didn't inhale. I simply did it just to look cool around the older kids that I preferred to hang out with. I will never forget the day when one of the older boys approached me and a few of the others hanging out about and asked us if we wanted to get high without taking drugs. I didn't even know what drugs were at the time, but I knew that they were bad and they should be avoided. So naturally, my curiosity was piqued immediately. Get high without drugs? How exactly was something like this even possible? He led a group of us into the woods where we would be out of sight and view from police, parents, and anyone else nosy enough to halt the plan. The plan was to get high, but interestingly enough, to get high somehow without actually using drugs. Oh boy, I was so curious and so excited I could hardly contain my enthusiasm. What was this all about, I wondered. Who wants to go first? The older boy said. I'm pretty sure my hand was already raised before he even opened his mouth. He told me to stand in front of him as he positioned himself behind me. I remember looking at the boy standing in front of me, wondering what exactly would happen next. Was I about to get raped? Perhaps this wasn't about drugs or a drug-free euphoria as promised, but a ruse from an older kid to get a bunch of clueless little kids alone into the woods. I really didn't know, but for some reason I trusted him and I felt comfortable with the situation. He then told me to relax and take 20 deep breaths, as deep as I possibly could. He explained that on the 20th breath I was to hold it in for as long as I could, and from behind me he would push his fists into my sternum and make me pass out, and he would then carefully lower me to the ground. I did what he said, and I put my trust in the process. The feeling that was to follow was the feeling that I've spent the rest of my life searching for. It was amazing. It was like a dream. I had just experienced a total loss of consciousness, a complete blackout. When I came back to reality, I was lying on the ground, and I thought I had died and went to heaven. All the younger boys and the older boy as well were standing over me with concerned looks on their faces. I had no idea what had just happened, but it felt incredible. I'm pretty sure the very first words out of my mouth were that I wanted to do it again. I would bug the older kid to pass me out every time I saw him. And one time he said, "Quit bothering me all the time. Doesn't your mom have any whipped cream cans in the refrigerator?" I had no idea what he meant by this at the time, but it didn't take me long to find out. After several weeks and several cans of what Mom and Dad assumed were defective aerosol cans of whipped cream, they stopped buying them altogether. The chase was on, and it was the chase for the feeling that would take me decades to overcome. As crazy as it sounds to most readers, the very first drug that I ever tried was cocaine. I was very young, perhaps around 11 or 12 years old. I really wanted to try marijuana, but it was to be cocaine that would pave the way for the road ahead. We were at a family picnic in Sodus Bay. I had always looked up and admired my cousins Richie and Steven. They had long hair, hot girlfriends, and they both played guitar. I really liked their friends as well, and their friends took a liking to me, and even though I was significantly younger, my family had planned on spending the night as did many other family members and friends. I remember begging Mom and Dad to let me sleep outside in one of the tents with the older kids. My parents had no way of knowing that at the time, but saying yes was a big mistake. I really wanted to try marijuana, but my cousins absolutely forbid it, and as the joint was passed around, I remember getting skipped every time at the request of my cousin because they knew that if my father smelled pot on my breath, all hell would break loose. In unison with the joint being passed around was a small mirror with some foreign white powder on it. I watched as some of the guys in the tent would put a rolled up dollar bill to their nose and snort a line of this mysterious substance. I was intrigued and I wanted to try it. Of course my cousins said no way, and my turn was once again bypassed. Just let me try a small one, I begged. The white stuff doesn't have a smell, so there's no way my dad would smell it, I pleaded. Eventually my wishes were placated and I talked my ass off for hours and hours and stayed awake the entire night. In the early 80s, while Nancy Reagan was encouraging kids just to say no, my friends and I were too busy saying yes. I lived down the street from the coolest place ever. It was called the Motorcycle Supermarket. They sold tons of cool shit, and I absolutely loved the place. In addition to motorcycle parts and accessories, they also sold drug paraphernalia. You could buy rolling papers, bongs, bowls, etc. For an up-and-coming stoner like myself, walking in there when I was a kid, it was like walking into a candy store. After lying to the owner that I was at least 18 years of age, my very first purchase was a little glass vial of this liquid with a tiny ball inside it. It was called Rush. It was an inhalant. My friends and I would inhale the fumes on the bus and get incredibly lightheaded. I remember my second purchase from this awesome store was a t-shirt that had a skeleton guy sitting on a nuclear missile giving the middle finger, and the shirt read in bold print, "Nuke the bastards and let God sort them out." I love that shirt. That's the end of chapter 4, the introduction. Thank you.